mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic.
Hey everybody, welcome back to One Mic, and today I'm here to talk about Season 4, Episode 5 of Amazon Prime's The Boys, entitled Beware the Jabberwock, My Son. While this episode did have a couple of head-scratching moments, it was largely The Boys doing what The Boys does best. Wildly creative, extreme violence, and hilarious one-liners. I'm not one who is incapable of admitting when he was wrong, and I said in my video for episodes 1 through 3 that I didn't know if this show still had the creativity to continue to push the envelope on what we see on TV. And this episode kicked me in the balls for that. There are a couple of really great and entertaining action sequences in this episode, some hilarious lines and moments, including what is probably one of the hardest lines I've ever heard delivered in anything. And it was just a generally entertaining episode. However, if you look past that dazzling and glittering surface level stuff, the story at the heart of this season remains weak, as do a lot of the subplots. The structure of the story, as in how it's presented to us, feels very sloppy, either confusingly conveying information or skipping conveying that information altogether. And yes, I will expound on that. But at the end of the day, I don't watch The Boys for intricately laced storylines. I watch it for the over-the-top violence and superheroes being naughty, and this episode delivered on that, so it's a success, to me at least. Hey everybody, I just want to take a small break from this review to talk about the various other ways you can engage with me on other platforms, if you're so inclined, and I understand why you wouldn't. I am an acquired taste, but you can join the Patreon, where you can get extra content like retro reviews, where I review old shows and movies to see if they still hold up today, Mike's Musings, where I talk about shows I'm watching that I don't cover on the channel, or Mike's VOD, where you can commission me to watch a show, which I will then review on the channel. And if you want to engage with me and chat with me more directly, I also implore you to join the Discord and follow the Facebook page. I set up channels in the Discord for all of us to discuss the shows I'm reviewing on the channel, and I also drop new videos in there, since it's the easiest platform for me to share to from my phone. The Facebook can be really fun because I sort of live comment on shows I'm watching, often while under the influence, I'm not going to lie. And I'll also share news there, both about television and film, and about myself as well. So if you like my content, you want to be more engaged, you think I'm charming, or you simply want to show support, feel free to sign up for the Patreon or join the Discord or Facebook today. Links to all platforms are in every video description. Remember to share all my shit to your respective social media platforms. And now back to this review. This episode doesn't split too much of its time. It's largely focused on the plot surrounding the boys and their attempt to get the virus that kills Soups, as well as the subplot with Huey's father. Butcher and Kessler is Jeffrey Dean Morgan's character, they want to get their hands on the virus that kills Soups that was developed by Newman on Gen V. I'd be curious to hear from people who watched this show but didn't watch Gen V. Like, I assumed stuff from the boys would leak into Gen V. You want to keep watching the flagship show, at least in the back of my mind, while I watch the spinoff, as you build the spinoff up into its own thing. But I was curious if stuff from Gen V would end up on the boys, because that could be confusing for people who didn't watch Gen V. Like, everybody who watched Gen V has probably also watched The Boys, but the same can't be said in the reverse. Are people who didn't watch Gen V frustrated with the references to it? Like, this episode ends with showing Sam and Kate from Gen V having teamed up with the Seven, and this show hasn't even bothered to give them names yet or say where they're from. Like, if you didn't watch Gen V, you had to be sitting there like, who the fuck are these two? And you'd have every right to be kind of pissed, but you know, like the MCU, for instance, has built up such a strong world that they can kind of expect you to have seen most, if not all, of the other stuff. The boys can't expect you to have seen Gen V, and it seems like they kind of do. But as someone who has seen it, I don't care. But that's why I'm asking. Like, I'd be curious if it's bothering people who haven't seen Gen V. But anyway, like I said, Butcher and Kessler, they want this virus. Now, when I talk about how I don't look to this show for intricate plot details, an example of this is when Butcher casually asks Mother's Milk to get him a presidential pardon, and then Mother's Milk later hands him a presidential pardon. And I feel like that should have been way more difficult than they made it seem. But like, that's the plan that they want to enact. So they offer a presidential pardon and custody of his granddaughter Zoe to Stan Edgar, returning. Why am I spacing on his name? Giancarlo Esposito. Jesus, that would have been tragic. And they offer him a presidential pardon and custody of his granddaughter Zoe if he helps them nick the virus from Newman. I just wanted to say Nick. He also learns that Zoe was given Compound B in this scene. Stan Edgar learns that. I loved how when he left and he saw the van that they were in, he's like, "Can I have a towel to sit on?" that was a great line. So anyway, they go to a secret lab to look for the virus, but Newman arrives and does kind of state the obvious. Why did they think they would be able to get Stan Edgar out of prison when she would find out about it? Like that was a good point. Then again, another example of what I don't expect this show to do, but wish that it did. Newman's like, "I can't find Samir," and I'm like, "Who the fuck is Samir?" And Stan is like, "We should all collectively squash our beef to go find him together." And I'm like, "Who the fuck is Samir?" And that played out really weird. Like, I was supposed to know this dude's importance before they revealed it later in the episode. And we do eventually learn about Samir's role at Vought and that he's Zoe's father, but that sequence just played out really clunky for me. I'm like, y'all were on a really important mission to find this virus, and now everybody needs to squash their shit and go find Samir together? Who the fuck is Samir? But anyway, I let it go because of how cool all the shit that happened after that was. The action sequences with the V'd up animals was outstanding. Like, I feel like even on paper, that might have sounded lame, but it really worked on the screen. Chickens shooting through people's bodies, those sheep pulling apart that bull in midair. Man, that was some great stuff, and that's the kind of shit that I'm here for. At some point, Butcher says that Samir's cooked up a Kentucky Fried Massacre, and I'm just like, yes! No, this is the dialogue that I'm here for. This is my show. During this sequence, Butcher sees a rabbit that he released have a monster pop out of it, and I think that we, the audience, are to make the connection that that's what's happening with him, that the little wiggly thing that's crawling around his head pops out just like it did out of that rabbit. That's what killed my man last week. So they end up injecting the one remaining vial of soup killer that Samir has into one of the dead bodies for the souped up sheep and chickens and shit to eat and die in order to save themselves. When Butcher's desire was to use that last vial to, of course, kill Newman. They inexplicably send Stan Edgar back to prison despite him actually trying to help. But Newman gets him back out. And we close the episode by learning that Butcher and Kessler have Samir by the leg and are going to force him to make more of the virus. The other main focus of this episode is the subplot with Huey's dad, though we do spend some time with the Seven as well. When his dad wakes up, he seems back to normal. Huey, his dad, and his mom having nice conversations, laughing, sharing reminiscing about good times, cracking beers open. I'm going a little far, like barbecue and burgers. Everything's going great. Huey asks his dad why he gave his mother the power of attorney, and his dad tells him this story about Huey not being able to make the tough decision about putting down a pet when he was a kid, and he says that he didn't want, if he were to end up in a situation like that, to end up like that pet, knowing that Huey wouldn't be able to make the tough call, which, as we know, is exactly what happened. Huey was unable to make the tough decision. Later, Huey's dad's powers do eventually kick in, and he's like the boys' version of like the Reverse Flash, passing through walls and later through people. The scene where he runs through the wall and then like halfway through that guy in the hospital bed and he's like rotating in place, like what's going on? And the guy is just getting ripped to shreds. Again, magnificent, guys. I absolutely loved it. Once Huey's dad snaps out of his trance and becomes clear what must be done, and I don't think the show ever tells us how Huey got the vial that he got, the soup killer vial. Huey and his dad get to share a really nice final moment that he didn't get when he originally thought his dad was going to die. And I thought this was a great scene because anybody can relate to not being able to say goodbye to someone that they lost, but then what that chance would feel like, what it would feel like if they got the chance to actually do it somehow later, and how much of a weight off of Huey's soul and his shoulders that must be to be able to have that final moment that he didn't get when he just got a phone call, your dad had a stroke, and now he shows up and his dad's not there. That's what happened to me. Like, I got a call about my dad. When I showed up, he was already out of it. He wasn't like Huey's dad was, but he couldn't even talk in like discernible English when I first saw him. So like, I have a lot of unquestioned answers that I didn't get to resolve with my father. So like, anybody can relate to that. And the idea of getting that second chance, I thought was really great how they played that out. They've also done a good job of building up this relationship, the relationship between Huey and his father, by having Simon Pegg consistently appear on the show. So I think the show also did the work to make that scene more impactful. Meanwhile, the Seven, they're still trying to find the mole. We know it's A-Train. Sister Sage seems to also know it's A-Train. But through a nice little sequence of events, they set up the guy that Ashley was doming to take the fall for it. This works out for both Ashley and A-Train, and should get everyone except Sister Sage probably off of the mole thing for the time being. Now, a couple quick things before I wrap this up. I mentioned one of the best lines that I've ever heard in anything was uttered in this episode, and that is very true. It's when Butcher tells Annie that he called her a cunt, but she doesn't have the depth of the warmth. Another applause. My God, I'm adding that to my own lexicon, my own little journal of phrases to say, that was brutal. Love it. We also, we see Homelander. He's finally starting to have the intended negative impact on Ryan that he's wanted to have. I don't think the show has done enough to believably get him there, but it is what it is. Ryan was resistant to being like Homelander all the way up until he just wasn't. But we also see Kate and Sam from Gen V. They're now with the Seven. I think they need to address that head on in the next episode. I saw Gen V, full coverage here on the channel, but I think it's arrogant of the show to assume that all fans of The Boys also watch Gen V. Arrogant, and I'm also certain probably also wildly inaccurate. So it's time to tie the two things together. Lastly, Fritchie turns himself in for murdering Colin's family. I don't care about that. I don't think you guys do either. So let me know what you thought about this episode in the comments. And until next week, peace.